Hi, and welcome to MyCom's Practical Guide to Social Media for Church Leaders. My name is rdunn. One of the things that I'm likely to keep drawing back to during the course of this training is an idea about knowing and responding to our audience. As this was a widely broadcasted webinar, I felt really unsure about exactly who the audience for this session might be, which made it hard to get really specific in many cases. In fact, I wasn't really sure how to best serve who might actually show up here. So I've decided that it would be best for the course of this webinar to present our social media strategies for the United Methodist Church's existing social media profiles, and then just leave a good amount of time at the end of this presentation for question and response so that we can get more focused or specific about the key areas that might be of most benefit to you. So this webinar is broken into two parts. This upfront part, I'll present our strategies, our rationale for those strategies, and how those look or play out on each platform that we're on. And then we'll do the question and response time live afterwards. A little about me again. My name is rdunn. I'm an ordained deacon in the North Carolina Annual Conference. Currently, though, I'm serving in Nashville, Tennessee with United Methodist Communications. My job title is Minister of Digital Engagement, and in that role, I oversee the denominational social media profiles. I do some of the content development for that. I schedule essentially all the posts. I'm the primary moderator for our social media accounts. It's fun. It's often challenging. It's simultaneously rewarding. I sometimes make very public mistakes and sometimes get to be a bridge between people and their local communities of belonging, which is very special. Prior to this role, I coordinated the digital presence for UMCom's Rethink Church brand. If you remember that, that was super fun because it served as a space to really test out a lot of platforms and ideas that I got to bring into my current role. I have a background in local church ministry, mostly with youth and young adults, but also some experience going way back in digital content development, broadcasting, and online marketing. Again, I don't know everyone in our audience here, but I'm guessing a good number of us are approaching our digital ministries with backgrounds more related to parish ministry than to online marketing. And initially, I was hired to be a pastoral presence. And so I had to learn the ins and outs of social media really just through daily immersion and actually doing it. And that's what I can bring to this space today. So I may not have all the lingo and the quick facts of those who have an education background in digital communications, but I do have the perspective of a person who in ministry who's been heavily engaged in social media really for the past decade. And that makes me feel kind of old. So let's move on. Our goal for the United Methodist Church's social media is to create brand awareness and constituent alignment. I know those are some deep marketing terms and we're going to unpack those a little bit, but we will use these social media platforms. Really, this is what this sums up that previous statement. We're going to use our social media platforms to let people know who the United Methodist Church is. That's brand awareness, and what the United Methodist Church cares about, and that's our constituent alignment. And this overall strategy came about through observations made through watching the online growth of some local churches. So while a big part of my job is social media management, I also kind of get to be an internet troll for Jesus. Like, I don't go around looking to stir up the pot or to start arguments. Instead, I'm really kind of lurking around the digital realm, looking for topics and conversations that excite people around spirituality and faith. And I'm looking for what churches are doing in those spaces that create a sense of connection and a forward movement out into the world, a sense of outreach. What I've noticed is that local churches who exhibit growth in our post-2020 culture are very easy to get to know through their digital presence. They have a clear digital footprint. Now, part of the ease of knowability is that they tend to bring their presence into their online spaces or into the online spaces that people already inhabit. There's this very Methodist ideal of moving towards people and meeting them where they are. It's kind of the open air preaching ideal. as opposed to calling them into a particular space in order to learn about what the faith community is all about. This is a local church in Nashville that we see up here on our screen, Glendale United Methodist Church. And Glendale's probably doubled over the past 8 years. And I think a big part of their ability to invite people in has been their social media presence. You can get a pretty good sense of who they are by looking at their profile here. And you can certainly infer that topics around justice and inclusion are important to them. We can see that they're multi-generational. I would guess that they have lots of shared meals together based on what we see here. What I don't see within this space are announcement slides or stock images that they've pulled from Pixels or something like that. Incidentally, though, a couple of these posts are about announcements, but they're doing something very clever here with Glendale. They're working with the will of the all-powerful algorithm to get their announcements and invitations to the people. And this is something really important to note. It's kind of a golden rule. Social media platforms do not exist to share our information, our feelings, our views, or priorities. Instead, social media platforms exist really to keep people on their platform. And so we need to be mindful of the platform's goals and not just of our own goals, which again, the platform's goals is to keep people engaged on their platform. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they're all about attention. So the algorithm rewards content that keeps people scrolling and swiping, watching, or engaging. And if we want our content to be seen, we need to create things that unfortunately serve the platform's goal as well. And that's what Glendale United Methodist does really well here. They're doing some broadcast style posting where they're saying like, hey, we have an event coming up. It's at such and such a time. You should come check it out. But they're doing it with the algorithm's goals in mind. So they're using lots of pictures of their people, doing the things that their church does, and then they're using the description to provide that information. And it's also cool to note here that Glendale does not have a staff person for their social media. It's volunteer driven. Now, I don't know the role of the pastor in their social media procedures, but I do know that a volunteer person, a uniquely passionate volunteer person named Stephen Adair, oversees their social media. So in the interest of our sharing the United Methodist Church's messaging of open hearts, open minds, open doors, I've borrowed some of those ideals that I've observed these churches utilizing. We want to make it easy for a user, for a person, for a seeker to discover who is in the United Methodist Church and what the United Methodist Church cares about. For the United Methodist Church, we're going to treat our presence on different social media platforms as part of a whole. So that means that each platform we're on has a semi-unique audience in mind, and each of those audiences then comprises the whole of the UMC Online. We're not assuming that we're reaching all the people through each individual platform. And that means that we tend to tailor content to communicate specifically with that audience on that platform. Now, if you're just starting out, or if you're kind of doing a reboot on your church's social media, you may want to just start on one platform. And the best suggestion is to start where most of your people already are. In most congregations, honestly, that's going to be Facebook. Of the global usage of social media, around 60% of the users are on Facebook. But maybe you have a really young congregation or ministry group, and most of your people there are on TikTok. The important thing is to pay attention to where you're most likely to grab a hold of some brand ambassadors. These are the people who are going to interact with and share your content. Where they are, that's where you also want to be. I'm going to talk specifically about Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and a little bit about YouTube in this presentation. And we'll start with Facebook since it's really the biggest elephant in the room. Our goal for the UMC Facebook page is to empower brand advocates. Again, that's the people who are going to interact with our content, and get more UMC members interacting with and sharing our content. Again, I realize that brand advocates is one of those market industry phrases. It's just kind of a shortcut term for people who are going to be our top fans or our most engaged users. Our primary audience for the UMC Facebook page are current United Methodist Church members. Now, there's a rationale for us targeting content towards current members instead of prospective members or seekers. And again, it has to do with that algorithm. Once upon a time, institutional brands, including the United Methodist Church, including probably your local church, really ruled the Facebook feed. Basically, the bigger your following was, the more exposure you garnered on the platform. That's no longer the case. In 2018, and I know that this is a while back, but some people are still kind of operating with the former circumstances in mind. In 2018, Mark Zuckerberg made some announcements about Meta changing their algorithms in order to prioritize person-to-person interaction. And they followed through with it. You're much more likely now to see a piece of content from your old high school buddy than you are to see a piece of content from the United Methodist Church. Size following does not matter nearly as much. What Facebook really figured out was that when we're talking from peer to peer, we're more likely to stay engaged on the platform than when we're seeing tons of posts from pages with mega followings. For our institutional pages, this means that we can't really count on Facebook sharing content for us. We're not a high priority for them. Unless, of course, you want to shortcut the whole system and pay Facebook to make your content that gets you in front of people through boosted posts and ads. And we can talk about that in the Q&R if people care to. But for right now, we're going to assume that we're going organic, and we're going to have to assume with that we're working with the average church social media budget, which last I checked was about $5. And that means that if we want our content to reach beyond our community, we have to provide content that our current community or audience wants to share with their friends. And this means that I've begun focusing on some new key metrics for our Facebook content. I want to see our content getting shares. Shares is my new favorite thing right now. And we can be lured to concentrate on bigger numbers like reach and engagement or interactions. But I've noticed that if shares are high, the rest of those numbers, the interactions and the reach, are also high. To me, share indicates that we've provided a piece of content that a member feels is so valuable that they want to share it with others. And if they're sharing it, then we as a church become easily knowable. Because of course, if someone wants to know what United Methodists are like, well, they can easily see their friend who shared that post and have an assumption about what United Methodists are like. So for our channel, a few things that I've noticed is that prayers get shares. You don't want to overdo it, but do invite your people to pray a couple times a week. And don't be shy about providing topics and words for prayer. Our local United Methodist churches and agencies responding to world situations and conflicts and tragedies, content around that has been highly shareable, though I'd prefer that we not have a lot of that type of content available or in need of a lot of that type of content. Also really shareable are helpful quotes, spiritual practices, and article links that people find really valuable. Shareable stuff. Now, we're going to move on to Instagram. There's a lot of overlap in our audience from Facebook to Instagram. We're still primarily targeting members here, but we found that Instagram members tend to be a little bit younger and with less background in the UMC than our Facebook members. So that means that the content takes off, or the content that does take off on Instagram looks a little bit different than it might look on Facebook. I found that on Instagram, people really respond to answers to questions about the UMC. I hate to say it, but on Facebook, people want to debate the merits of those answers more, while on Instagram, the audience expresses more of an appreciation just for the perspective. Usually whenever we post this kind of video, it often comes out as a reel. Several people ask for more kinds of that type of content. And again, we're often doing that in a reel format. So a person talking to me, just as I'm talking to you, presenting an answer to a question that's often asked about the UMC. And a couple things that I've noticed about reels along the way is that first, people talking garners more attention than text over a moving background. Even if that person is just like a talking head like I am right now, it's static, It seems that the algorithm or our human minds, or probably both, prefer the personal feel of having a person speak to us. And a personal address is the most preferred. So it's pretty easy for us to like rip a clip from a sermon, and that kind of works well. But what seems to work even better is having a pastor or ministry leader address the camera directly and deliver a quick spiritual thought or contemplative question. Instagram stories are really useful as well, much more useful on Instagram than I've found them to be on Facebook. They're not going to grow your follower count much. So people outside of your already subscribed followers don't see your stories, but stories are fantastic for deepening engagement with your existing audience. Stories are only, again, distributed to your followers, so they're not going to be effective as an outreach tool. But here's a catch with stories. Don't just repost your feed. What we're looking to do is to create some unique content tailored to the stories platform. A few tips would be to use interactive features like a poll sticker or a quiz sticker or a fill in the blank. You want to avoid overusing the link sticker. I think that there is value to the link sticker. You just don't want to do it too much, because we want to remember the algorithm rewards content that keeps people engaged on the platform. So they don't want to see people leaving when they click your link. Instead, what you might want to try is this. Instead of saying like, hey, we have an event coming up, click the link to find out more. What you can do is invite people to send you a direct message with a keyword, and then you reply with a link to more information. And this keeps people on the platform longer, which Instagram loves, and it allows you to provide real-time value to the person, and they get to participate in something. When putting together stories, we want to keep in mind that like 85% of Instagram users watch videos with the sound off. So don't stress too much about voiceovers in the stories. Instead, make sure that your videos and stories have text on screen in the forms of captions is preferable. So you can have that talking head with the caption below it. For some reason, the algorithm loves that. And with stories, you can also get away with putting a lot of written text on screen. When we looked at Glendale, we saw that they didn't have any text over their pictures. Well, in stories, you can actually put text over those pictures. And it can work in your favor in that if people have to hold their finger down to read a story to make it appear on the screen longer, it signals engagement to the algorithm. And that's a win-win. So just a few ideas for stories and what you might put there in terms of content. Trivia or quiz questions are a lot of fun. An idea might be, how many miles did John Wesley travel by horseback? You can do quick polls, something like, what's the best potluck dessert? Banana pudding, apple pie, or pineapple upside down cake? And I've seen some creators that add an option that allows people to see results in a poll without offering an answer, like we're data mining in some way. So it just makes them more comfortable to be able to see that, but still engage. It's fine for our purposes. Countdown reminders work well in stories. So you can say, hey, registration for the youth lock-in ends tomorrow. And this is a good space to do those kind of timely updates, because stories only last for 24 hours. So it's not like you're going to post, hey, youth lock-in registration ends on Wednesday, on Tuesday, and then Friday people are still looking at that post. With stories, I would recommend not overdoing it. I feel like posting 10 stories in a row all at once can feel really overwhelming to the user. I recommend sticking to 1 to 2 at a time. Some people recommend 3 to 5 if you're spacing them out, but I've noticed in my own behavior, my own usage of Instagram, if there are a lot of stories, 6 or 7 stories posted at a time, I'm not likely to read it. I guess internally I feel like they're being spammy or greedy. It's too much for me. So I really shoot for that 1 to 2 stories at a time. I think that's kind of a sweet spot. Now, our measures of successes are going to be different on Instagram, of course. Instagram is not conducive to link clicks at all, so we can throw them out really as a viable measurement. Shares is still pretty useful. For our purposes, I like to see an increase in profile visits. To me, that indicates a curiosity about the UMC and a willingness to learn more. So that means that we should have some appropriate ways for people visiting our Instagram profiles to take a next step. And in the simplest form, this would just be to make sure that your website link is up to date on your profile page. I've started using a third-party link system. Linktree is a popular one that a lot of people have probably heard of. I've been using link.bio, that's lnk.bio, which I learned from Beverly Touchton, who does GBGM socials. Each one of these pictures that you see there in that link.bio is from an Instagram post, and each one of those is clickable, taking the user to the corresponding page. So in that way, I'm able to say like, hey, see the latest updates from UMCOR, click the link in our bio. When you go there, you see that same post and you can click it there. All right. Shall we talk about TikTok? I'm not going to spend too much time here. Currently, TikTok is supposed to be banned. It's just that certain branches of government haven't enforced that ban. And because of the in and out nature of the platform, our strategy for the UMC is probably a little underdeveloped. But we have dabbled in the platform. We've found it useful for connecting with younger members, which is our target audience for that platform. And one thing to note with TikTok is that a large number of young people now use it as a search engine. So when they want to research something or find out how to do a particular step-by-step process, oftentimes they're searching TikTok. And not surprisingly, with that in mind, our most watched videos on TikTok are, again, answering questions about United Methodist beliefs. MyCom did a YouTube series a number of years ago where United Methodist leaders answered questions from a perspective. And topics include like, what do United Methodists believe about the Bible? Or what do we mean by the open table? What do United Methodists believe about hell? And I took those videos, I converted them to TikTok videos, and they remain our most popular videos. They're over 2 years old now on the TikTok platform, but they're still gaining new views, which is uncommon in a social media world. Generally, we post something, might have a usefulness of like 7 days, and then it really, for the most part, disappears from the feeds. So the fact that these particular videos are still garnering new views several years later suggests the power of TikTok as a search engine. Therefore, if you're going to jump on TikTok, you may want to consider posting answers to theological questions or answering questions about what your particular church believes or practices. If your church is open and affirming or reconciling congregation, a great move on TikTok would be to share what that means for you, or share what it means for your church to participate in the local farmer market or to host a spring rummage sale. One church that I've consistently seen leaning into this kind of content is First United Methodist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. One thing that looking at their profile suggests is that cover images are not really that important. Really, the only usefulness is when someone is scrolling your profile. So that's one thing that I picked up in preparing for this webinar, is that I'm probably dedicating too much time and energy into crafting cover images. More important are relevant video descriptions and use of searchable hashtags. Personal accounts tend to get more shareability on TikTok. This is the profile of Jeremy Steele. He's a pastor in the DC area who has leveraged answering questions on TikTok into a full-time appointment. Of course, his numbers are pretty large because he has the time and the energy to invest in really learning the ins and outs of TikTok and building a presence on that page. But here's what I've noticed in talking about the relationship between institutional branded accounts and personal branded accounts. I personally have a rarely used TikTok page. I go months between posts on my TikTok profile, but each one of those posts outperforms a majority of our UMC page posts. And I have a couple theories about this. One is that TikTok is wary of institutions or companies using their resources to take over the feed, so they guard against it. Secondly, I noticed a stark dip in our viewership on the UMC channel about 2 months after we stopped spending money on TikTok, meaning that they could be holding out for money before they show our content. So all this goes to say that if you're personally interested In cultivating a TikTok presence, you might be better served by utilizing a personal account over an institutionally branded account. Your message of grace is likely going to reach more people that way. Finally, a few words about YouTube. Like TikTok, YouTube is often used as a search engine. In fact, last I checked, it was the second most utilized search engine behind, you can probably guess, Google, which is YouTube's parent company, which means that searchability on YouTube equates to a degree of searchability on Google. Google has a tendency or a fondness for returning YouTube videos as part of its searches. And because of this searchable access, YouTube is a great platform for engaging people outside of our church or ministry. Our UMCOM strategy for the UMC YouTube still very much in process. For years, we've been using it like a library or a depository for videos that we've produced. We haven't been intentional about cultivating a community or audience on the platform, but developing a sense of intentionality there would really help us connect with spiritual seekers. So with Facebook and Instagram, where we're focusing on current members, on YouTube, we may want to be a lot more intentional about organizing our channel in a way that it is accessible and understandable to those outside of our faith community, and to produce content then with them in mind. So much like much like TikTok, YouTube is a place where content has a long lifespan. So you'll see the fruit of the efforts of producing a video for several years. Whereas again, on Facebook, Instagram, after a couple weeks, it's kind of lost from memory. I've noticed that unlike TikTok though, cover images and video titles are really important on YouTube. And that's because of the way videos display in searches. The cover image needs to be exciting or enticing and informative. And it's not uncommon actually for YouTube creators to change their video titles and cover images after a video is released, especially if they think the video is underperforming. So we're looking here at Brandon Robinson's channel, obviously. Brandon is a United Methodist pastor who does YouTube part-time, and a lot of his videos get hundreds of thousands of views. He has definitely figured out how to produce content that is relevant to the platform, and part of that is that the YouTube audience is foremost in his mind when he's developing that content. Our practice at UMCOM and at most of our churches is to produce content for a different audience, and then we tend to share that on YouTube. And that's not an indictment. For most of us, it's just the reality of the resources that we have available. We don't have hours to spend making platform-specific videos. We'll just have to accept that our streamed worship services and our sermon recordings are unlikely to hit huge audiences. So if you have a passion to reach people through YouTube, it takes a YouTube-centric approach. All right, this has probably gone on longer than I expected, so here's my contact information. We're going to transition into the live Q&R time. I appreciate your attention thus far. If we need to prime the pump with questions, a couple topics that I didn't really get to were utilizing direct messages and automated responses to invite people to take action in response to posts, or developing some practices for comment moderation. Okay, I'll talk to you in a second. Hey, okay. Sorry, I needed to. Are we still good, Ricky? I needed to mute my speaker there. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. We'll dig into these questions that y'all sent along. Please keep them coming in. I think like our time is open ended, so we'll stick around until we get everything answered. Did see a couple questions from Barbara and from Bill asking about clarification for the algorithm. So algorithms are basically they're like formulas that a social media app like Instagram might use to discern what content it's going to share with their members. They're all kind of shrouded in secrecy. So anybody who's saying like, here's how you beat the algorithm or use the algorithm is really kind of guessing. So when I say like, hey, this is stuff that is probably going to be shareable across an algorithm, it's just a trend that I've noticed in sharing. The one thing that I think we can count on with the algorithms is that the platforms are all looking for content that keeps people engaged on their platform. So when we talk about generating content that invites participation and shares, that's the kind of thing that they're looking for. Hope that helps to clarify a little bit. Joanna asked, where do you suggest we start with a general age of 70 or older? My gut says probably most of your people are going to be on Facebook if it comes to social media. I was in a church service once where, as part of the sermon, the pastor asked, like, hey, if you're on Facebook, would you raise your hand? And 90% of the people in the room raised their hand to that. So that may be something that you would want to try within your congregation, maybe not in the course of a sermon, but just to get a sense of where your people are. But again, I would guess, based on the demographics that we see from social media platforms, that probably Facebook is going to be the most likely spot to serve those people. Do I have any recommendations? This question is from Megan. Do I have any recommendations on frequency of posts and stories? Stories I went through in the presentation. My goal is really to post like one story a day. I feel like that's a good sweet spot there. As far as recommendations for the frequency of posts, I would say just as long as I would post as much as you're comfortable posting, or where you feel like you can post good posts. I've seen some institutions that are really kind of spamming out. Like they might do 6 or 7 posts within the course of a day. Most of those posts end up getting ignored. And I think that their idea is like, oh, we're just going to keep throwing things out there until we find something that clicks with people and it goes viral. I think that most of us probably don't have the time available to adopt that kind of strategy. So we really want to spend time developing good, solid posts that we think are going to connect with people and have them engaging. So that may mean that we're doing one a day. It may mean that we're more focused on maybe doing like 3 posts a week on any given platform. I don't think, again, I'm guessing on the algorithms here, but I don't think that there's any penalty for not having an everyday presence on any specific platform. That instead they're just looking for whatever posts are garnering attention. And so if you're able to post like 3 times a week, and that's kind of the max for you, that's what I would shoot for. And just making sure that there's good attention on those posts, like you're able to invest your best self in the post. So my warning really is against feeling like I need to hit 7 to 10 posts per week, and you end up having like 6 posts that are just not worthy of people's time. So shoot for what you can actually like provide people with value on your posts. Can Facebook Live, this question is from Cindy, can Facebook Live be rebroadcast on YouTube? Yes, it can. There's a couple different ways to do that. Like if you don't care about kind of simulcasting at the same time that you're posting on Facebook, well, after your Facebook Live stream is done, you can download that video and then post it to your YouTube account. That's what I do with my church's Facebook live stream. You can also, though, you can simulcast, but it does take a third-party program or app. We have an article through MyCom that explains some of that. So when we share some of the resources from this webinar, we'll share that article out as well, where you can look through some of that. But some of the third-party apps that make the available, or OBS, I think that has free features where you can simultaneously broadcast to both Facebook Live and YouTube Live. A question from Deanna? It's asking, how is the best way to use the boost options on socials? Boosting is when you're paying to have your post just a little bit more noticed. Certainly, this is the way of kind of, it's not really cheating the algorithm. Well, maybe it is. You're giving money to the to Instagram or Facebook or whoever to get a little bit more visibility on your post. The best way to, I think, utilize that is make sure that you're using it for things that are really kind of important to your congregation. So, and something that's going to have usefulness over several days. So I don't want to put up a post about an event that's happening at the church tomorrow. That's a very urgent post. However, if I try to boost that post, it's probably not going to go so great, because the way that at least Facebook and Instagram work is that they watch behaviors over the course of several days and learn how to best reach a specific audience then. So it'll even tell you as you're setting up a boosted post, and you would do this through Meta Business Suite. It'll tell you that, well, we recommend that your boosted period be at least 4 days and probably closer to 7 days. So, and also the tactic that I've taken when it comes to boosted posts is really to do some trial and error. So I started very small, wanted to be a good steward of the resources that I had in terms of the money that I had for boosting. And so I started with small amounts, and even just a small amount, I've noticed on our church page, a $5 boost, like $5 per day or $5 total. It's a small amount, but it helps us. It very much increases our exposure to people, and it helps us understand who it is that we're reaching. So when it comes to boost options, look for starting small so that you can understand who you're best reaching, and maybe try out some different audiences so you can do a targeted audience. For a church audience, I would really recommend looking within your own geographic area, doing some geo-targeting in there. Best platform for recording videos. That question is from Barbara. Barbara, I don't know if I have a great recommendation there. I think we'll probably have to look for some resources to share out afterwards. I often just use whatever platform is available. So if I'm making, for example, if I'm recording myself for an Instagram and Facebook reel, I'm probably just recording on my phone and then putting that into a editing software. I use Adobe Premiere on my own laptop, but in times past, I've used CapCut, which is a free online platform that you can use. I think Canva is a free photograph and video editing platform that you can use as well. But yeah, again, I'm recording that first on my phone, and then I'm uploading it to these other places. Tammy is asking, how important are hashtags on Facebook? I'll start with that question. There's a few of them here. So hashtags were once very important. I think that they're kind of decreasing in importance. The latest research that I've read talking about hashtags on both Facebook and Instagram is that Facebook and Instagram aren't searching for hashtags within their own algorithm. So it's not a way of garnering more exposure. Instead, people are saying, well, you can use hashtags as a way of kind of categorizing your own content. So, for example, on our United Methodist Church accounts, we do a Music Monday. I'll hashtag all of those Music Monday posts with that hashtag Music Monday, simply for the purpose of making that searchable for myself. But it's not really a way anymore of garnering more attention by jumping on a trending hashtag. Instead, they're saying you need to concentrate more on what you're writing in the description beyond the hashtags. TikTok, I'm not so sure about. I think that hashtags are still somewhat useful there. You can still search by a hashtag on TikTok. I've noticed on Instagram, like you can't even really search by a hashtag anymore. It turns back some crazy results. It's just going to show you like the most popular posts over a several year period under that hashtag. So it's not always so much of jumping on a trend as much as it is categorization. Do I have any insight into linking Facebook and Instagram? When a Facebook account was created by a former staff member. Yes, yeah, you don't want to start all over. Yeah, hopefully you'll be able to get the contact or the login information from that former staff member. There may be a way to work through Instagram or Facebook to recover the login information for that account. And you may have to resort to contacting those agencies to get that. Sarah's asking, is there a good place for beginning training on each of the platforms? So besides some of the resources that we have available on MyCom, which I would recommend you checking out, and again, we can send this in a follow-up email after this. I think a great way to learn about this stuff is to search through YouTube and see what comes back, especially if you're looking for platform-specific kind of material. So look out for there as well. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Some of the podcasts that I've found to be particularly helpful are Social Media Examiner is one podcast, and that has a whole platform around it. Another one called Social Pros has been another helpful one. Within the church world, there is an organization called Reach Right that has some good information. And there's Brady Shear is the creator. He has an institutional brand that's escaping me right now. I think it's like pro church tools. They often dive into this kind of stuff too, and can offer some good information there. What is a helpful source from Megan again to uncover potential topics and keywords for YouTube videos? Renee and I were just talking about this. Renee is one of our workers with MyCom and kind of oversees that brand. And we were talking about this prior to this webinar. She was bringing up checking Google Trends on a daily basis. And certainly that would be a great way of kind of uncovering maybe what people are searching. Also, just looking for what people, there are ways that you can kind of track back to see what people are searching on different platforms. YouTube, you can look for most frequently searched things. Also, I think just searching for a topic that you're interested in and seeing what kind of videos on YouTube it reports back with is a way of taking note of what people are looking at, especially as you're looking to connect with a specific audience. So follow the interest of that audience, try to suppose what questions they might be asking and search for that and see what other content is getting kicked back to you. Might help to reveal like what kind of topics and keywords are good for YouTube. Kristen, hi Kristen. What are my tips, tricks for creating good, real content? The talking head part I think is big. So we're looking often to connect with people on our content. So having a person addressing the camera as if you're talking to another person works really well in creating good, real content. Make sure that somebody knows right up front the value that they're going to receive through through watching that reel. So even if it's just a 60-second long video, person needs to know up front, like what kind of question are you answering for them, or what kind of value are they going to take away from the end. So having a good hook right up front in the video is very helpful, or something attention grabbing right up front in the video is helpful as well. Tim asks, is there a good weekly schedule for posting to Instagram, Facebook, stories, and reels? Yeah, again, I would kind of default back into whatever is going to work best for you. It's kind of a cop-out answer, but what I mean by that is whatever works best for you to be able to develop good quality content that brings value to people. So um, I like the idea of having no 0 weeks on my church's social media feeds. So that means that, like, I'm just looking to make sure that we're posting a few times a week. What has helped me personally is to get into kind of a rhythm of things. So instead of thinking about our social media calendar as spaces that I have to fill, meaning, well, it's Monday, now I need a Monday post. It's Wednesday, now I need a Wednesday post, and so on. I look to actually have an idea of what we're posting across each week, so that there's almost like a flow and a build up to the week, where towards the end of the week, I'm posting an invitation to worship. At the beginning of the week, I might offer, I'm thinking about how can we bless people as they're moving into this week. So oftentimes that will be a blessing or a rehash, maybe a sermon clip of what we just had. During the week, I might look then to share something that's going on within the community during the week, and then culminating that in invitation to worship towards the end of the week. On the UMC socials, I have almost like the same kind of rhythm, where on Mondays we're looking to offer people some kind of blessing for the week. On Tuesdays, I'm focused on the larger connection of the church. On Wednesday, I really try to highlight a Methodist voice. On Thursdays, it's all about local church activity. And then Fridays, I'm looking at the lectionary and seeing what kind of posts that we can pull out of there that then hopefully, like in my mind, it works where somebody is going to go to worship on Sunday and they're going to hear the scripture reading and they're going to be like, that sounds a little bit familiar to me. I wonder what God is trying to speak to, how God is trying to speak to me through this. So I would say develop some kind of rhythm that you can default into through that would be really helpful too. Otherwise, there's just this built up pressure of feeling like, oh, I need to fill out the calendar. Fred asked, what about X? Fred, I can't answer about X for you because it's not a platform that I've been engaged with a whole lot. So we may have some resources on that we can share about afterwards, but that's not something that I have a lot of experience with that I can speak to. All right, I'm going to jump down to Karen here and then maybe circle back to some of these others that we've had. Karen asks, any suggestions for how to develop a presence for our new for-church cooperative parish? Should we seek one volunteer from each church? That is a really great question. And I would think that maybe you want to start with a vision. So you are a cooperative parish. Are you going to have one unified social media presence? And if so, as you're pulling together, definitely pulling together one volunteer from each congregation there, what can they provide in terms, or what would be important for them to building a unified vision for your shared social media presence? And that may end up looking like, well, maybe we want to have separate social media presences in terms of being able to serve our audience in the best way. That would be demanding, of course, upon time and resources. So, and also think about like the shared rhythm of those four different congregations, like as one pastor visiting four different congregations each weekend. And what would that look like if you're going to share some sermon clips? Is that meaningful across four different platforms, or do you want to band together for that shared presence and have one unified account? But I would say that probably the best way to start that conversation is to pull people together for some kind of vision casting there. Meaning that, Karen, I'm sorry, but I don't want to answer that question on behalf of what would be important for your congregation. Circling back to Kristen's question about, do you get the sense that Instagram stories is a good place for people to share social justice and advocacy content? Yes, I do. She goes on, I've seen friends all over the country who are not connected to faith communities whatsoever share content from one of our former UMC pastors who speaks out against Christian nationalism. I don't know if that's specific or you've generally noticed that. I think that here's what I've noticed in stories, that when it comes to statements from the church, it can be helpful to do that in a story. So for example, when the Council of Bishops released a number of letters a month or two ago, it was helpful for us to share the printed excerpts of those in stories instead of sharing the printed excerpts of those on the regular Instagram feed. And for that being the purpose that that printed text garners more interest in stories than it does on the Facebook feed, if that makes sense. Now, if it's somebody sharing personally that talking head again over an Instagram story, their perspective on that. I don't know if stories would be the right spot, simply because stories disappear after 24 hours. So if you want that content to live on in a specific space, then I think it's helpful to have that as a reel on the feed, if that makes sense. Also, though, I think that I do want to note that when we're talking about stories, again, stories are only shared with followers. So it can be a way of kind of buoying up your base of people, especially if you're talking about social justice issues, but nobody else outside of your community of followers is going to see that your church is speaking about this issue or taking a stand on this issue through your stories. Like that, it has to be coming through your Instagram feed. What about, John asks, what about Blue Sky? It's also in the same way of Twitter. It's not something that I have experience with using yet. Within the UMC, we've just claimed a channel, but we haven't began practicing there. So, sorry to back out on that question, but I can't offer you some best practices there because I haven't experienced that yet. I'm looking to see if there's anything that I've missed. Barbara asks, okay, use Facebook Love for YouTube later, but is there another way? I seem to remember that using a cell phone is harder to upload to YouTube or to send to someone else. Maybe that has to do with the connection, Barbara. And if you're trying to upload from a cell phone that's connected to data instead of to a Wi-Fi server, I don't think that YouTube cares much where the source is or what the recording source is for that. I will say that when you're loading to other platforms like Instagram and Facebook and even TikTok, they like it when you use their in-app features. So for those people who are using third-party schedulers or third-party social media management, when it comes to putting features onto, say, an Instagram reel, my best practice has been to actually upload it in Instagram itself and then post from there, because you can add on all the bells and whistles, and Instagram likes that stuff. I think they like it when we use their features that they've rolled out for people. And I think I've hit everybody else's questions. Nope. Again, thanks for hanging out, everybody. I hope this has been somewhat helpful. As you do have more questions that come up or I missed something, again, my email is rdunn@umcom.org. Feel free to email me there. And Renee will be sending out some follow-up information about how you can rewatch this, and we'll have some of the links that I mentioned to some helpful stories where maybe I just didn't have the information right, or things that I didn't know about. One more Q&A. Thanks, Ricky. Can you offer insight about which online giving platforms generate the most interaction? Sorry, Carly, I can't offer insight there either. Is that's not something that I've had personal experience with. At my church, we use a number of online giving platforms. Some of it is through Facebook itself, so that there is a giving mechanism that we have set up through Facebook. But then also on our website, we have something related to our money management system that you can give in through there. And I think Renee has some insight on that. She's typing out an answer. Before we close out, I just want to say again, thank you so much for your attention through this time. And again, invitation to drop more questions in email. Jim, I see that you've raised your hand, but if you have a question, I'll invite you to share that in the Q&A button at the bottom. All right. Well, peace and blessings on you. And my final thought would be just to go out trying to share the good news of God's grace through whatever you're doing. And I think that is a value in itself in proclaiming on social media platforms. So stick with that message of grace and try to look to represent that well in whatever space you're trying to present that towards. So thank you so much.